All right, so welcome to episode one of the Diaries. I'm not really sure what we should speak about on the first episode. This is like a series that I've been wanting to do for a while. I actually got inspired by a guy called Matt who was doing it for his e-commerce brand, where every week he just does like an episode like this on his YouTube. He just releases it and he just talks about what's happening with him building the company. And I thought it was a really cool idea because it'd be really great to look back on videos like this in say like 2, 3, 5, even like 10 years time and actually see what the journey was like. Because I've been doing online business, been an entrepreneur now for quite a few years. I first started my first business in 2016, a total failure, and maybe I'll talk about that in some sections in the future. But I don't really have any like footage of me starting my business. I don't have like even any photos or videos or anything like that. So it's all like in my memory. But I thought it would be really cool to have actually a documentary of like what's happening, and it'd be cool potentially to look back, like I said, in a few years time and yeah, just see the journey that I've come on. So I don't even know if I'm going to be posting these videos straight away. Honestly, I might just release them in the future. Depends how I feel. But I've been procrastinating on shooting something like this for a long time. So I just said to myself, right, I'm just going to do it once a week. And even if I don't post them or edit them or whatever it is, at least I've got them and maybe can release them in the future because it'd be pretty cool. So the main company I'm going to be documenting right now is a new coaching company that it's March 2023 right now. I started the company basically earlier this month. I think maybe at the end of last month we officially like registered the company, but we actually kind of like launched and made sales for the first time at the start of March. So yeah, I run an agency as well, a marketing agency and advertising agency, which I've been running for a few years. But the new coaching company that I have with a business partner, I think this has very big potential to go a long way, make a lot of money, grow a big company. So I thought it'd be really cool to just focus on that company and yeah, just show the documentation of us growing it from the ground up. Because like I said, it's less than a month old right now, and we've already had a ton of stuff happen, which is interesting to look back on in such a short period of time. So I'll quickly touch on some of that stuff today, and I'll give you a bit of background on everything, and then what we're trying to go on in the future. And hopefully, I'll do these weekly, where I'll just give updates on what we're working on, what the growth of the company is, and I'm going to be trying to be as transparent as possible with like numbers and figures and all that sort of good stuff. So I suppose we can begin. So you can see on the screen right now, this is our ClickFunnels account. And in our first month, we have done $21,870 in sales, which is okay. I actually wanted to do a lot more. I'll be totally honest. I wasn't disappointed, but I felt like we could have done a lot more money. And a few things went wrong, and we've got a ton of learnings and stuff like that. So yeah, it's interesting. So just to give you a bit of context, this is a online coaching program or an online coaching company. My business partner, she's the face. We own the company 50-50. I'm like the back end marketing guy. I went to her and say, hey, I want to create this company. I think we would work great together. Do you want to go and do it? And she said, yes, she's in. So she's the face of the company. She has a YouTube channel. She is the brand and she is the coach, right? It is her brand, but I'm kind of like driving the strategy in the back end. And like I said, it's a 50-50 split. We have a company. We're both directors. And yeah, it's something I've been wanting to do for a while. I've been thinking about it for a while because I don't have a big brand online. And, you know, I don't want to like teach just Facebook ads or something like that. It's like 2023. So it's not like a new opportunity per se. So I've been looking for a while to see if I could partner with someone who does have a brand and I know how to like monetize and make money off personal brands because I've been doing it for so long. And again, I can talk about my backstory maybe in other episodes, but yeah, I've been looking for it for a while and I knew this girl, she's called Lucy. I've known her for a few years just from like different businesses and stuff like that. And I can see the growth that she's had on social media over the last few years, but I could see that she wasn't really running any like proper course or coaching program. So I thought there was a huge opportunity there. And we already had that relationship. So the conversation was easy and we're both very similar. Well, we're totally different actually, but we're both like aligned in like what we want to create and values and stuff like that, even if we are completely different personalities. So yeah, I'm super excited for it. Like I said, first month we've launched, we did just over $20,000. We sold a 6 week coaching program for $497. So it's $497. I believe we made 43 sales in total. A couple of these sales that you can see on here was like me testing the funnel, and they were like for $1 each when I was just checking the checkout. And the way we launched this in the beginning was just your typical webinar funnel. We didn't use ads or anything like that. Like I said, Lucy has a bit of a brand on Instagram and YouTube. So we just marketed to her warm, organic audience. We did a free webinar. So it was the very typical Russell Brunson style perfect webinar type of thing. It wasn't like that script. It was different. I wrote the script word for word. So it wasn't the perfect webinar script. I took inspiration from it, but it wasn't like, hey, these are the free secrets and kind of like the typical thing. But it was like a 90-minute webinar where we taught for 60 minutes and then we did the sell. And I can go into the detail on maybe a bit more in detail in other episodes, but I want this to be fairly brief and not go longer than 10 minutes. But I suppose like the interesting thing that happened was we had a few problems already in like the first week. So we launched and everything went well. We had like a load of registrants. I don't believe we had like over 2,000 people register for the webinar, which was great. But we were using Webinar Jam, where it was only, they had a limit on the plan that we had of like 500 people live at one time. Now, if you have 2,000 people register, 25% show rate for 500 people is pretty good. But this is her warm, organic audience, and it's the first time she's ever really done a webinar. So the show rate was actually a lot more. But we didn't actually predict for that to happen as much. So we basically, the day before or the day of the webinar, we saw there was like over 2,000 people registered. And we had a decision to make. We could just not increase the plan that we're on with Webinar Jam and increase it to 1,000 registrants live or 2,000 live. I can't remember what the upgrade is. Or we could just stick to the 500. Now, obviously, it just made sense to increase the payment, right? It was only maybe an extra $200. And if we got an extra like 500 people on live with us on the webinar, then obviously we would make that money back. So it wasn't really a monetary decision, but we'd already promoted in the marketing for the webinar saying, hey, there's only 500 spots live. Like if you don't show up early, it's very likely that you're going to get locked out. And it was true, right? Because we only had 500 people who could join live. And obviously the day before we were talking about it and Lucy was like, well, we were both like, well, we could just increase the limit. And then like when we're in live on the webinar, we don't have to show them how many people attend live. Like we can hide that number. So even if there was like over 1,000 people on, they wouldn't know, which was probably what 99% of people would do. And maybe it's what we should have done, but I don't know. Part of me didn't like the fact that we had marketed to everyone saying, hey, there's only 500 spots live. And then for us to let more than 500 people in. I don't know. Maybe it's a value thing. Maybe it's not a very big deal. That was part of it. I just didn't feel good about it. And then I was also unsure that if we created the webinar on the lower plan and then we increased the plan, is it going to affect that webinar? I don't know. I just didn't trust the tech maybe a little bit as well. There's just a few different reasons why we said no. Maybe that was the wrong decision, but I feel like it was the right one, which I'll explain in a second. So we launched it and we did the webinar, but I was with Lucy beforehand, like just showing her how to use the webinar software and stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to be on live with you. I'll watch it. And if anything goes wrong, I can message you on WhatsApp and you can just quickly check your phone. So she's great at presenting. So I didn't have any issues with that. But obviously we underestimated how many people would show up. So even like as the webinar started, I was in the waiting room. And as it started, I got locked out. So I was supposed to be like watching the webinar with Lucy and like messaging her and making her sure that like her sound was okay, the video was okay, just like if anything was going wrong, just being able to message her. But I had to message her and be like, you're on your own because I can't even see the webinar. So I got locked out of my own webinar, which is Pretty funny. And then I was managing the customer support inbox, and we literally got, I think it was like literally like 60 to 100 people emailed saying, I can't get in. Like I'm locked out. People were like annoyed. People were like really like being dicks in the email, being like, I can't believe you would do this to me. I can't believe I waited, and like how blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you had a lot of interesting people emailing in complaining that they couldn't get in. But the sheer amount of emails we got was, I swear it was like, I can't remember off the top of my head. I swear it was over 60. I counted within like 15 minutes of the webinar starting, and obviously all these people getting locked out. I swear we had over 60 people email within like the first 15 minutes. And you've got to think, if there's like 60 people who emailed, how many people didn't email, right? Is it like 1 in 10? Is it 1 in 20? So we probably had like 600 to 1,000 people not get onto this webinar. Bearing in mind, there's 500 people in the room, plus another 600 to 1,000 people maybe who didn't get on. So I think we would have maybe had a show rate of literally like 75%. I think there was maybe like registrants like 2,400 in total when the webinar went live. But anyway, so I was actually stressing at this point because I was like, I can't see the webinar. Like, this is the first time we've done it. First time Lucy's used the software. So I just kind of had to like trust, honestly. I was speaking to like Webinar Jam, seeing if we could increase the limit while she was live, but they were like, it probably isn't going to increase the limit then. But anyway, obviously I couldn't see the webinar, so I didn't know what was happening. So I just had to kind of wait. And I just waited basically. She was supposed to start selling at around 60 to 75 minutes in. So I was just kind of like just sat there waiting for like an hour, and I was basically looking at the Stripe account or looking at the ClickFunnels account, being like, when are the sales going to come in? And it didn't come in. An hour passed, an hour and 15 minutes passed. I think it was getting up to an hour and a half had passed and no sales. And I couldn't see the webinar. So I was like, shit, like what is happening? And then I was in the waiting room the entire time. Like I kept trying to get back in, but it kept saying like locked out, the webinar room is full. So throughout the hour and a half, I just, every minute or so, I kept trying to get back in the room. And about 90 minutes in, I tried again and I got in the room this time. So obviously maybe a few people had left for 90 minutes into this training. So obviously people were going to drop off. And I was in, and I was like, okay, great, I'm in the room. What's happening? And she hadn't even started the sell yet. We'd wrote like a word for word script, but for whatever reason, just this happens when people go live. It was not necessarily a Lucy thing, but like you might have a script, but then you start giving like little stories around like the script, or you say extra words, or you say extra sentences on each slide. And over like 100 slides, that stacks up to a lot more time. So she was saying the script, and I listened to her obviously finish the rest of the presentation. She was saying the script, but then, like I said, she was then maybe just saying like 1 or 2 sentences at the end of each sentence or at the end of each slide, which just increased the time massively. Now, the other issue with what we had was that the current plan, with only 500 people live at one time, you could only host the webinar for 2 hours. So at 2 hours, it cut off, which is obviously a big problem because we're 90 minutes in, she has 30 minutes left, and she hadn't even finished the teaching. She's not even started to sell, which was a whole, thing in itself. So she does it. I'm messaging her being like, you kind of need to hurry up here, but obviously she's presenting. She's not looking at the WhatsApp. So like, she's, going through it. And we get to literally like 1 hour and 45 minutes in, and she starts the sell. And I'm just like, there's no way we got enough time to do this. She's not even going to get to the price drop in time. And I could see that she was trying to like rush through the sell. So she announced the program. She kind of went through of like what you're going to get. And then literally she rushed through that. So it wasn't done properly. And then with like 5 minutes to go until the webinar shut off, she released the button where she's like, and it's going to be 497, like special opportunity, right? But what happened was she had a mic like this, and it was a bit bigger than this one, but it was blocking the bottom corner of the screen. And the issue is that when you say on Webinar Jam, hey, I want to publish the button, like in Webinar Jam, if you guys don't know it, you're watching a webinar, in the bottom right corner, the button pops up and says like, buy now. And then it takes you to the checkout page. But when you're like manning the controls inside of Webinar Jam, you press publish on the offer, which I showed her how to do, or like launch offer. I can't remember what word they use. But then before it goes live, there's a notification that pops up in the bottom right corner that says like, do you want to publish this? Like just to double check, like, are you sure you want to take this action, right? Because obviously you don't want to press that button by accident. But her microphone was blocking like the bottom right corner of her screen, which meant she never saw the button. So she was saying, okay, so it's 497. So you should be able to see a button in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen now. Just click that. You're going to go to the checkout page and you can then you can join the program. But there was no button there because she couldn't press publish. And we had less than 5 minutes left. So people in the chat were like, where's the button? Where's the button? Where's the button? And she was like, oh, you can go to, blah, blah, blah.com, which was like the domain. So she did say that, but like it wasn't on the screen. I think we had maybe 2 people buy in that like 5 minutes because they'd gone to the domain that I think she either showed it on the screen or she said it a few times, but there was no actual button where you could click. You had to like type the URL in, which is obviously, making it very hard, like much harder for people to actually go through and buy. So it was a disaster. And then she was talking and then obviously the 2 hours passed and it just shut off, which was just like, it was just like a crazy thing. So not only did we have like maybe potentially 1,000 people not attend who would have attended, so we missed out on so much money there. But then in the actual presentation itself, we didn't even sell properly. Like it was this really rushed sell. Like she couldn't go through all the bonuses. She couldn't go through all the objection handles. She couldn't like do all the closes and anything like that. It was literally just like at the end of the training, okay, I've got this program. This is the price, this is the cost, this is what you're going to get, special offer, and then boom, it was gone. So it finished. We quickly went on like WhatsApp video call. We were like, what do we do? What do we do? So we quickly set up like another webinar room on Webinar Jam. Lucy started it. I sent an email out to basically everyone who attended. So everyone who was in the live room, so like the 500 plus people that over the 2 hours had got chance to get into the room, we emailed them being like, hey, like the webinar ended early, use this link to get back on. And we did actually get maybe like 100 plus people back on. I think it was definitely like over 50, which is pretty good. So we got like 100 plus people back onto this new webinar room. And like Lucy kind of like went through the cell again, and this time she got the button up, but it obviously just wasn't the same. It was, the energy wasn't there. She was kind of like having to repeat stuff she'd already talked about. It was obviously just like really, really messy. And then, she did great. She went on and, she sold and then she did a Q&A and stuff like that. But I can't remember exactly how many sales we got at the end of that, but maybe like 5 people joined, which obviously wasn't great. And we knew we kind of like missed like a big opportunity. So we were kind of like, what do we do now? So that finished, loads of things went wrong. People locked out the webinar. I got locked out the webinar. The script went on way too long. We didn't really get to sell. It's obviously a whole load of issues, right? So, and like this was the first time Lucy had done something like this, or at least presented a webinar. She'd spoken on stage in front of people and she'd done YouTube videos, so she's good at presenting. But like, I think obviously that lead up to the launch, she was just hoping she could do the webinar and then just like, relax and we make a load of money. But obviously we'd hardly made any sales, probably maybe like 4K at that point, 5K. So like, right, we got to try and do it again. So this was like on a Wednesday evening, I think it was. And then we decided to do another webinar on the Sunday. So we basically just did the whole promo again, and we used it to our advantage, honestly. We were like, look, we didn't say, obviously, in the marketing, we took too long on the webinar and we couldn't sell to you, so, we need to do it again. But I'm lucky now that we didn't let everyone in and that we had that cap of 500 people, because obviously the sell didn't go the way we wanted to sell. And if we'd had like 1,500 people on, and we messed it up in the way that we did with the webinar cutting off, the script going on too long, not doing the sell properly, then we would have wasted a lot of money. But what we did, we used it to our advantage, and we'd have said, hey, look, we only could have 5 people on live. We had hundreds of people not being able to get on, and we actually screenshotted like all of the emails in our email inbox, and we were like, literally hundreds of you have emailed us in the last 24 to 48 hours saying that you couldn't attend the webinar, so we're going to host it again for you. And we wouldn't have been able to use that marketing message and that angle if we would have let everyone on the first time. Like, what was we couldn't then just say, oh, we want to do it again to sell to you. We could have said something along the lines of, we had X amount of people who registered but didn't turn up, so we want to do it again for you. We had so much fun. I'm sure we could have angled it in a different way, but there was obviously like 1,000 people-ish, maybe 500 to 1,000 people who tried to get on that couldn't. And we're lucky that those people didn't see the first webinar because it didn't go very well. So we basically marketed to everyone again, being like, look, loads of people emailed in saying that they couldn't get on live, they got locked out. What we've decided to do is run it again on Sunday. So we basically just did like another promo, did the Sunday one, and it went pretty well. She stuck literally word to word for the script. It was like she finished the teaching on like 60 minutes, bang on the dot, did the sell. We did everything wrapped up in about an hour and a half. And this time we had like 600 plus people on because we increased the webinar jam limit. So we had over 3 hours as well to do the web class. But yeah, we did that. We sold. It still didn't do as well as we wanted. If you have like 600 plus people on live with you, and when she was doing the sell, it was still around that number. The retention of the webinar was great. There was like most people stayed all the way through. There was hardly any people dropping off. So for us to have like 2 webinars, both had like 500 plus people on at the sell, or at least 500 people on at the sell. And for us to only do 21K, it's not actually that good. So that's why I'm disappointed. But obviously, like 21K in itself is nice to have. Obviously, we split it between the two of us. So yeah, I mean, a lot of learnings, but it was super stressful. Just very intense over that week with everything that was going on. But yeah, it was like a really good learning experience. We know a lot of ways in which we can improve the webinar if we decide to do it again. But yeah, it was just an interesting launch for sure. And yeah, even though we didn't get like the big result we wanted, I think we made we did well turning what was like a bit of a disaster situation into a good situation by doing it in again. And I realized there'll be some people watching this being like, oh, well, Sam, that's not a very big problem. Like I've dealt, there's more people with bigger responsibilities, bigger businesses, and more stress than, a webinar not going well. So I understand it's all relative to where we're at. But obviously at the time with a new product launch, we've worked really hard on it. I'd wrote all of the emails, built the funnel, wrote the word for word webinar script. Lucy had her audience on with her. In that moment, it was high stress, high pressure, even though in the grand scheme of things, maybe not the worst thing to happen in the world, but obviously launching a new business for the first time. So it felt important. So I thought we did pretty well. I suppose the only other thing I would say as well is that obviously the people on the webinar were Lucy's warm market audience. So again, these people should have converted because they consume her content. So it's not like these people came from cold market ads who've never heard of her before, which is obviously harder to convert. But obviously her audience as well, we don't know where they're from. So out of the 500 people on live, I know Lucy's audience is mainly US, UK, and she also has a lot of people in India. So I don't know how of the 500 plus people, how many people were actually from the more affluent countries who could probably easily afford a $500 coaching program compared to, people in the poorer countries who, it isn't easy for them to be able to just spend $500 on a course. So that's something we can't really know those numbers, honestly. There's no breakdown of IP address of people where people attended from and stuff. So it would have been interesting to see out of the 500 or 1,000 plus people that did attend either one of the webinars, how many people were actually from maybe UK, US, Canada, Australia, or the more affluent European countries, to maybe see what the true conversion rate was, because obviously it was low, right? we did 2 webinars, had like 1,000+ people actually attend live, and we only converted 43 people, I think. So if we have a look at, and I'm going to end the video soon because I don't want it to go on too long, but I think we had 43 sales divided by like 1,000. Maybe this is easy math. It's like 4%, so it's still pretty low considering it's like only a $500 offer plus it's her warm market. So yeah, I think we can definitely do better next time. And in the next video, I'll talk around like what our plans are for launching next. But I just wanted in this video give you guys a bit of context to what's going on, what's happening, how we launched it, and yeah, how we did and the lessons we learned. So that being said, I'll finish the video here and hopefully see you guys on the next one.